Hello and welcome everyone to our live stream with myself, Jason Dely, and Jeff Shearer, both from SANS and instructors and authors to the ICS612 course. So we're just going to go through and talk a bit about the course, kind of getting a little bit of the headspace of where Jeff and I came from when we put this together and why we put it together and why we think it's pretty amazing. So just a bit about myself, 20 years in the ICS industry, across many different sectors, doing many things from, it's basically supporting operations in kind of any way that needed to be at the time I got thrown into a plant to do something. So kind of lived a various different disciplines and so forth, which I think one of the things that we've carried into the course. So Jeff Shearer.
Hey, welcome. I'm so excited you guys are with me and so excited to be here. My name is Jeff Shearer. As Jason said, I am a co-author of ICS612, and can't believe I'm saying this, but this is my 37th year of doing automation and security in that realm. And it's like, I can't believe it. It went by in a blink, and people were so kind to teach me. And as a SANS instructor, I get to reach back and kind of help people learn about the journey that I took and hopefully accelerate their learning. And as Jason was saying, when we were approached by Tim Conway to create a course that was an in-depth ICS course, we realized quickly, or Tim realized quickly, that we needed multiple authors who were experts in different parts of the field. And so Jason brings a certain amount of expertise to the course. I bring a certain amount of expertise to the course. Tim Conway and Chris, they just bring different ideas and different focuses to what the courseware ended up being. And so what's interesting is we had to make some really tough decisions on what was going to be in the course and what was going to be dropped, because we could focus in a very narrow slice of here's exactly how you do a controller security on a certain platform, and we realized that just wasn't going to fly. So we widened the course offering to be able to offer our students something that they could touch from day one, starting at the lowest levels of the ICS world, programming a PLC and understanding how that worked, and then all the way up through it in industrial demilitarized zone, and then out and how do you reach through that industrial demilitarized zone. And again, it took a Jason Dely, it took a Chris Robinson, it took a Tim Conway, it took a Jeff Shearer, and the students that are attending. I just got finished teaching Nova at in Crystal City, and Jason was kind of the man behind the curtain, running the servers remotely for me, and Tim Conway was there adding his depth of knowledge to customer questions. And then myself, I led the course. I was the main instructor at that time, and of course, Jason has taught, as a main instructor as well. But the audience that we have, and the participation that we have, and the different levels of things that students have learned, we get a lot of good feedback, even whether you're control focused or you're IT focused. The comments coming back are we took a lot away from it, whether we're having an in-depth control conversation or we're having an in-depth PKI, discussion. It really is a wonderful environment to learn. So, Jason, I know we kind of have this joke, or Tim has this joke, is that whatever time we get, we'll fill it if we're talking about this subject. So I'll let you add some commentary in here too.
Yeah, feel free to post any questions, comments, what have you. The one thing I just wanted to highlight, and this kind of leverages off everything that Jeff said, but when we sat down, we had to really sit there and think, like, why are we building this? Like, what is our goal? And I've kind of made some notes. I really don't want to script this, but as I got thinking about this, it's kind of like we going through it, we know why, and then hindsight's like, why did we do that? So we're kind of thinking, to me, I kind of came up with kind of four things. One is we wanted to have a course because ICS cybersecurity crosses so many knowledge areas that we wanted to have a way to pull those together, whether we're talking control systems, mechanical systems, networks, operating system, firewalls, and just security in general.
Mhm.
And then we wanted to pull and explore those knowledge areas and how they work together, because Jeff and I both spent many times at facilities. And when you're talking about, an industrial control system, it's all of those things working and orchestrated together. You can't just look at one thing and not think about all the other things that are working, in cohesion and orchestration. So, we wanted to kind of bring that to the table. And we also wanted to look at the cross-training element of that, because we know we're going to have people that are, more control-centric. We're going to have IT folks and everything else. And so this helps kind of cross-pollinate or cross-train those different knowledge areas and apply it, and showing how those technologies are applied to an ICS from our experiences, which does came, to do that, though, is we felt very wholeheartedly that, we had to gain the knowledge and techniques, we had the benefit of gaining knowledge and tech experience from being in the field and working with the nitty gritty all the way through. And we know that there's a pile of cybersecurity folks out there in the OT or trying to get in the ICS side, and from whatever they're coming from, and they just haven't had that, same level of experience as far as being able to work hands-on with things. So we kind of equated to, you cannot get a license to drive unless you actually drive a car. And so that's kind of a big piece about this course. So, and then ultimately, we really wanted to apply that knowledge and experience to the unknown. So many times Jeff and I have been in, learning by fire. We'd get thrown in the frying pan, and we just kind of like, okay, well, this is where we're at. We got to move forward somehow from here. And so we would pull on our own knowledge, pull from other people, and try to work our way through. And so, towards the end of the week, we kind of pull that same kind of, simulation to light, and really kind of put the fire underneath those that are attended to, live some of those difficulties and frustrations of kind of a bad day in operations. And the reality is there's never a scripted way to move from, operations down to operations running, because there's so many things that can fail, whether it be cyber related or just
Mechanical systems.
General failure, right?
Yes.
So,
it's a good point, because when we take a student from day one, and it's kind of, depending on your background, it can be all thumbs, like, how do I get this to download? And so we start from the lowest levels. But on day 5, we actually, on the evening of day 4, Tim, me, and Jason break things. And so the students come in, and we put a big sign out front that the coffee, so it's a coffee factory that you're building from soup to nuts, kind of. And so then we break the coffee factory, and we have them come in, and they actually have to get the coffee factory back up and running. And there's physical elements. So we always do physical things, unplugging cables, unplugging relays, messing things up, like putting in the wrong port. We actually do, from the coffee factory, then we encourage the conversations between the students so that they can start saying, here's what I found. Here's how I was messed up. They changed the subnet mask. They did this, they did that. And so then eventually they get it up and running enough, and then we start attacking them. So we do cyber attacks, or if we encourage some students to attack other students. So it becomes this really neat environment to simulate the pressures of getting something up and running. But we also do coaching. So we do things like, how do you isolate? How do you start to get little systems up and running, and then build on that from system to system? So we don't really just leave everybody out there to blow out in the wind, but we've accelerated how they can do their job when they get back home. And actually, through this, I'm going to call it the simulated fire drill that Jason talked about, is in the real world, that's exactly what you're going to do. And SANS mission is to always make it so that it's practical training that you can do day one when you get home. And we've not had a comment back from a customer, from a student, that says, like, I learned a lot. I had some really great takeaways, and it's something I can use when I can get back. So that's that to us is really, really important. So the day 5 exercise is real fun because it brings kind of to a head, did you learn, can you apply, and can you go back and actually do it?
Yeah, and it to some it stretches their like they've never had to deal with this particular situation before.
Right.
So let's talk a bit about, because I think that's a good segue into we talk about the SANS mission of being able to take what you've learned and immediately apply it. We also, when we started looking at how we put this together, we started thinking like, man, how are we going to build this? Because we want to be able to, we want the experience to be driving the car, right? Like being at a plant. And so,
Right.
but at the same token is, we had to look at, all right, we have all these various levels in the Purdue model that we want to kind of tackle because there's quite a strong architectural element to the course. We wanted to take them from, to Jeff said, day 1 from building, doing some PLC connectivity, doing some interlocking with other PLCs, carrying that over into the SCADA system, putting some firewall pieces on there, and then doing some monitoring and asset inventorying and other stuff on day 4. So kind of a true soup to nuts. So essentially, the SANS model has always been, individual student experience. We felt it was very important that, even though there's very much going to be a shared system, we wanted to make sure the students had a individual experience. There is some, a little bit of sharing between the two as far as the systems are all connected. You're not like just with your laptop and your little kit and away you go. You're part of the entire plant. So you are very much part. Everybody in the classroom is joined together. So I guess the way we really approached it was lots of gear. So kind of in total with the full running class of 30 students, we're looking at like 45 PLCs, 45 HMIs. There's 110 operating systems. There's 30 firewalls, and there's a complete SCADA environment at the front and lots of networking.
Yes. So, and I want to just say that I enjoy the comments in the side that Basim has been in the course and said an amazing course. And back to Jason's point is we had to very selectively figure out, like, there's a lot of things going on in a factory, right? And so we took the basic elements that you're going to see. You're going to see PLCs, you're going to see HMIs, you're going to see possibly a SCADA, so we put that in. You're going to see HMI servers, you're going to see historians, you're going to see firewalls. And so unless you touch that, it's not like driving the real car or flying a plane or whatever. You actually have to touch it. And so you'll find probably you have a strength in some area and you'll feel very comfortable on a certain day. And then you'll get stretched on another day where it's like, like in the Nova run, I said, how many people have dealt with firewalls? And there were a few. And then how many people have done, remote connectivity stuff, like set it up? None. And so you're gonna learn things and get takeaways, and architecture matters. And so we would talk about how this all got architected. Myself, Jason, Chris, Tim. So we did different architecture references so that you could understand best practices of it. And again, it's quite a lot of gear moving around. When I did the actual bill of lading, we accommodated about 3,000 pounds of gear. So all the IT racks or the IT rack and all the servers and all that stuff. So it is a cool experience, and people who are alumni of ours have done this. Like the comment, it is fun. That was a Basim comment. And anyway, so back to you, Jason. Yeah.
No, that's a great point. I mean, it kind of leans on how do we strengthen this course? Like when it comes to,
right,
we're trying to teach experience, we're trying to teach techniques and other, situation, but, kind of throwing them into the battlefield and trying to prepare them. So we pulled a lot from, as far as, what in our past were unique learning moments for us. Mm-hmm. And we kind of leveraged off of those and pulled them in the course. And I think, even, things like a firewall, there's elements to how some of these technologies are applied into the environment in a control system, which may not be, or may be a very unique operating requirement than the way a firewall is typically deployed in an IT environment. And so, we looked at how do we bring some of that stuff to light and pull it forward. So, yeah,
Awesome.
I think I had some camera problems going on here.
Yeah, there you go. Now you're
on a different camera.
That's awesome though. The other thing is that the students, as we have ran this class, we've found where students appreciate different things and don't appreciate others. And by that I mean the course isn't stagnant yet. So we as we run and we take where people are either struggling or that's kind of ho hum for them, we're looking at how we add to that experience. So we have basically 5 days, I will say 4 days, to try and prepare everyone in an ICS environment, so that if you get dropped in, if you're an IT person, or if you're an OT person and having a conversation with an IT person, you can have that and kind of understand each other's seat that they ride in most days. But the evolution from where we started, even through the limited runs that we had, because of, we're coming back to in person and we're excited to be doing that. We learned from every run that we did, what gaps do we have in courseware to make it better for the environment that most people will see. So we're not stagnant. We're still looking at gear and possibilities of student experiences as the courses continue. So we have some things that, like at Nova, I ran in day 4, I ran a beta lab where they got to experience it attacking each other. So that we could drive traffic into our monitoring system in a very unique way, and then seeing if the monitoring system could pick up that attack. And so we are evolving and trying to make that just action-packed as possible.
Yeah, and at the same token, we have part of the evolution is also being aware of what's changing in the environments. And one of the other challenges that I think we handle quite well is everybody's coming from different industries, and each of those has different ways of using things and subtleties. So when we're looking at the concepts, and that's what we focus on here, is really trying to make sure we're bridging that. And I think we do a really good job too at the start of the day, trying to get a feel for what's everybody's background, where are they from. And it does a couple things for us, allows us to pull from, here's a story from, somebody's from rail. Okay, here's a story from rail, or
Right.
Here's a story from O&G, and let's try to make sure we keep everybody, engaged and familiar in their, so they can go back home and start applying it. And it also helps us for day 5 as well, because then, as we go through, we can see, there's certain things that we may apply to other people based on, this person's a network person. Let's give them a challenge on the network side, right?
Yes.
And that sort of thing. So, I think it's it helps with that, because we can keep the course fresh and aligned with those that are attending, instead of just everybody's getting exactly the same, and regardless of where they're coming from. So
Exactly.
we do have a core, obviously, material and stuff that goes through, but when we look at control systems, there's kind of a foundational knowledge piece that, everybody kind of follows. And then there's those little spin-offs that's unique to their industry. So, yeah.
And the spin-offs, we ended up just at the last run, for instance, call it spin ups or spin outs or whatever you want to call it, but we would spin into discussions that were variants of the core. And so there was discussions about cloud to direct to, ICS gear. And we brought up some information that I had worked on in my past. And that's the part I like about this course, is that yes, we run over and we struggled to get through 4 days of content, because we have those rich discussions of what have you seen other people do. And depending on who's in the audience, there's obviously some people in our audience that can't share what they're doing, but there's a lot of people who are willing to share what they've seen and what they've done. And that brings a richness to the class that we're not staying just in the rails of what courseware, the four of us had derived. It's a rich thing. And I think even with our last class, there was discussions of I'm going to say who and where could they get resources that had talked about these problem sets. And so we discovered, hey, I've worked on this, or I've done this or that. And so it's a rich course room environment, because there can be a lot of shared discussions, but especially from our course authors, we've seen a lot of things, and luckily we get to give that back through the SANS platform, called Being Instructors. It's just amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, it was.
What else do we have?
So the leaning on the customer discussions, we have pivoted and moved on what customers have asked us for, and so that even drives our particular content that we're considering for new labs and things of that nature. But overwhelmingly, people have walked out of there with an experience of saying, I get why this is hands-on.
Yeah.
So to the point of, like, it comes back on our evaluations, is most people who have taken SANS or SANS alumni, we live and die by what our customers give us feedback on. And so if you're standing in the front of the room, or if you're, SANS management, you're going to take that very seriously, what customers say. So I always encourage the students to give us your feedback, and that way we can pivot, especially with the lab situation. And even with the last course, we've gotten I get why this is hands-on and why you drag this stuff around. I kind of have this joke, if you work in a simulated factory, then work on simulated gear. But if you work on real gear, you need to put your hands on it eventually. And so things like on day 5, we had really two pretty, I'm going to call them swift. They were smart ICS people, and doing physical layer tags to them, it took them a while to find it. And so literally those are the smells. Like one time we blew up a student kit and the smoke rolled out of it, and it's like, oh yeah, this is why you can't do it this way. And so literally the smoke filling, or the smoke whiff of electronics in the classroom, was something that you can't get simulated. And so there's a point at which you have to be able to identify, this is a relay and this is how it's wired, and this is a drive system and this is a motor, and you can't just turn it on and off the motors in this direct manner. And so it becomes a different experience when you can deal with live gear. Like literally when you go up to the coffee thing, I say, don't put your fingers on these terminals, because you're going to end up getting shocked. Now, Tim Conway has been shocked so many times. He says, like, yeah, it doesn't bother me. But because he had an electrician background.
He doesn't drink coffee.
He does. Yeah,
in the morning.
Exactly. But anyway, it's the put on your hard hat and be careful, because you are going to, you can do things like, toast stuff. And so anyway, it's a different experience having live gear versus just simulated gear.
Oh, very much. And I think that we should just touch a bit on the equipment we have at the front of the room, because of course we can't have you can't teach ICS without having mechanical equipment. So it took a little bit of ingenuity, but Jeff managed to basically repurpose some off-the-shelf coffee gear and Frankensteined it up to support what we were trying to do. So you want to touch a bit on that?
Absolutely. So the coffee grinders themselves have, as Jason said, we all kind of had a hand in this Frankensteining effort, but we basically pulled it all apart. And I'm sure these grinders are no longer under warranty, but we have solid state relays in a PLC that acts as a line controller. And so we interact with the student kits, and they arbitrate for that gear. And there's 3 grinders at the front, and one does, the raw material delivery. One does the mixing and grinding and then the packaging, and then we send students home with coffee. And so, yes, Tim said Sparky in his comments. Yeah, so he is Sparky, all right. He doesn't seem to be mine to get shocked. But anyway, so the gear is only part of the experience to see the real live nature of when a student flips their switch and it turns the grinders off and on from clear in the back of the room, and it makes it from this little useless box all the way up to the grinder. And then we talk about the safety interlocks and how that works. Then I see, I often see, I see the lights go on, like, oh my gosh, I can stop and start it from here. And all the lessons that we build up to that point are, it's all message instructions, or it's all Modbus instructions, or it's SIP Ethernet IP instructions. And so this is what we've been building up to the culmination of this day. And the other important thing that you mentioned was, you and I realized that mechanical systems can't do what they need to do by themselves. So that's the only reason for control systems, and processes are the same way. And so we drag students through here's how a mechanical engineer or process engineer needs to talk to you in order, so did I program the right thing, and did I program the thing right? And so we pay attention to mechanical systems, and that drives our decisions on how we program. And so we like to make sure that we don't skip the mechanical design and process discussions. And so we talk about process flow diagrams and P&ID drawings and all that stuff. And so we familiarize our students with, that's really important to understand and also to protect. So it is a very in-depth discussion about how you think about the problem set. Like, don't get your intellectual property stolen. Why? Well, because now I have knowledge of your process and mechanical systems, and I can make them behave differently or not as intended. So,
Very nice. Just to kind of touch on a bit. So a lot of what we talked about was, you're building this plant, you're putting it together, you're reviewing it and identifying how to get information passively and actively.
Yes.
But we also wanted to make sure that there was not just a defensive side to this, but we also wanted to take the opportunity with the gear that we had to give students a chance to try to run some of the attacks that has been seen in the world against ICS, and run these in the environment, go through the steps to kind of understand what an adversary has to go through to get to this point. But also where it starts to really, I think, get exciting is come day 4 is you start opening both available and commercial tools, and you start looking at the environment, and you can see some of the attacks that's happened. And so it immediately has some flags. You can kind of see how these, because you ran the attack, and now you can see how these tools represent and present that information, which is valuable for a lot of organizations that are looking at evaluating different tools and stuff, to kind of get a feel. Because the hardest part, I think, is having been consultant for many years, the hardest part is, you want to, if you want a tool to purchase and buy and explore, you kind of need to know what problem are you solving with it. And so this just gives one flavor of an idea of, going through that process and trying out a couple tools and see what they have to offer. And, there's a lot of different vendors out there now in the ICS security space, and I think they all have something unique to bring to the table. And it's not a one size fits all. And we, I think, do a good job of, presenting different, perspectives for that, so that students can actually see generated data and information and see how that looks. So plus they get the fun of running some of these attacks on hopefully their own system, not other people's systems.
Happens
but
sometimes.
We're always looking at ways, like you're not going to let the smoke out. We've kind of capped that. We also looked at ways to prevent you from electrocuting, and we also are looking at ways to minimize the amount of peer-to-peer attacks that are happening, because that, it's not wild. It's just, we want to make sure that this individual student experience is not being hampered by some fun guy in the corner or gal that's,
Right.
so.
We've had classes where that's happened, and so we have students opt out of being the target. But as you get to the later days, it becomes obvious how you can stop being the target and eliminate some of the attack surface. But um, I was gonna mention is that we use some unusual tools in the course, and as a traditional OT person, um, you're like, I never get to use these tools. But we also use some tools that I always have, like historians and different trends and different logs that kind of awakens me to say, I never really realized I could use these to monitor unusual things that are happening in my system. And you and I did a webcast at one point. I think it was called Ghosts in the Machine. And so
Mhm.
the challenges that we have as OT people is that anomalies or anomalous behavior is quite frequent. And so we just start to blame that on, that's just the machine being weird. And so baselining weird and then baselining like this is a full on something's beyond just weird normal machine behavior is really important. And I think we did a good job in this class highlighting the tools. And specifically, I think you wrote the historian lab that really highlights this. And I think there are white papers that say, how can I use my historian as a security tool? And we
Yeah.
bring that to light. So it goes very, very well, I think.
It does. The operations, your first indication of something going wrong is going to show up in operations, and whether
Mm-hmm.
that's triggered by failing component, some kind of physical thing, change in the mechanical system,
Yep.
or a cyber incident.
Yep.
Somebody specifically targeting, not necessarily ransomware, because that's going to come out a little differently, but definitely if somebody was strategically trying to manipulate, the operation itself. And I think we try to capture some of that on day 5 to kind of highlight that, it's difficult for an operations team to decipher, it's not like they're going to see something say, oh, we're under attack. Like, I mean, that's not
Yes.
necessarily the way it's going to operate, or it's
Yes.
going to play out. So yeah, I think that's we try to take a lot of pride in trying to ensure that there's, they're living that experience, so that when they're talking to an operations team, that there's a little bit of a I don't want to say respect, because I think they already have respect, but there's definitely just an understanding that's kind of been developed, where they know that, hey, you know what? Yeah, let's figure out what are those going to be, those moments or those indications after during the triage that might flag you to the next level, because time is of the essence. And that's kind of some of the pressure we put on day 5 is, hey, the plan is
Yeah.
down, we're not making money,
That's
and
right.
so let's go get this thing going. And so it's game on, let's do it. So yeah.
It is game on. And so I'm gonna kind of wrap it in a bow a little bit here. So we kind of talked about training your hands and your mind. We kind of all chatted about this and said there's a specific element, and again, my dad was a wonderful mechanic, a mechanical guy. He would just got it. And so he had it connected between here and here. Heck, he had it. And so when we talk about 612, is we're trying to connect this and smells and sights and all the things that go along with that's a drive system, because I can hear it whining. All right. This is, a relay. I even know what a relay looks like. And so there's a point at which you have to go and do with your hands. And from an early age with my dad, he would flip me the wrench and say, like, let me explain to you what you need to do. And then I would mess it all up. And he'd say, that's okay. You'll get it someday when you grow up. And so the point being is there's an element of why we choose to drag 2,000 to 3,000 pounds worth of gear around the world, because there's a point at which you have to get your minds and your hands connected. We see that sometimes with amazing programmers and stuff. They're
Yeah.
able to make things do things.
But when you tie the whole mechanical system and electronics, PLCs, and all that stuff together, there's a point at which, like, the best engineers I've seen will grab a screwdriver and tighten things, or say this isn't right or that isn't right, or they'll open a cabinet, and we want you to do that safely. We want you to do that in a very controlled way. And then when you go back home, you'll at least understand the importance of that. So that's kind of my fleeting comments of
No, I
why
think
we do it. Yeah.
that's a good summary to the goals. So,
Yep.
So
I think
we're out of time.
I don't know if there's any questions here. There was a question, or I heard that OT is the same as IT. Is that
yeah.
true? No. So
it's
there
Dave.
are, yeah. So there are similarities. People might be wondering that, though. So the answer is no, and the differences are just understanding the importance, or call it the physical properties of an OT system, and that some PLC or some embedded system or even some computer system is controlling it. And so it normally is a control system that is controlling something physical. In IT systems, most of the time you're not controlling anything physical. And so the ramifications of messing it up are normally magnitudes different from an IT system and an OT system.
I like to call it in some ways you could look at and say in a business network, your users are people. In an OT network, your users are PLCs.
Yes.
So
for sure.
Very different in how they can function, but it also means it's very different in how you can do security, because things are much more automated in some regards. So
Exactly. So anyway, I appreciate everyone attending, and I really hope to see you in ICS 612. And again, I don't think so far our students have not been disappointed. So again, come join us on our journey for learning more about how to protect physical assets and learn about what they are in ICS 612.
absolutely. Thank you.